Welcome to Smalltalk Daily for Thursday, February 12, 2009. This morning I thought I'd go through using the Listbox widget in ObjectStudio. So to start, we'll create a new interface, and we'll call this Listbox example. Hit OK. Now that'll bring up the designer, and I'm just going to leave this fairly small because our example is going to be pretty simple. And what I'm going to do is go to Form Item, New Item. That'll get us our palette of widgets. I'm going to select here the Listbox, and I'm going to drag it onto the interface. And I'm just going to reposition it, make it a little bigger. I'm not going to worry about placement so much because we're worried more about usage. So I'm going to double click on it and bring this up. And now I'm just going to leave it with the default Listbox 1. If I wanted to go ahead and add items to this, I could double click here and put things in. But I want to do that more with programmatic methods. So I'm just going to leave this alone with that default there. And now I'm going to go ahead and save this. I'm going to do a File, Save, and I'm going to call this Listbox example. So we'll just save that out, and that'll save it. Let's close this all off. That'll close the designer. And now what we can do is we could either edit, and this would go back in, or we can browse. So let's browse. That'll bring up a browser on this in hierarchy view. So what we have here in the create items is just the programmatic construction of the UI. I have to know what method to use to fill that in. So it turns out that the method I want to create is called post open initialization. And this is kind of like, assuming I spelled it right, this is kind of like in VisualWorks post open with, because it happens after I've opened the interface and before I've initialized it. So what I need to do is send super post open initialization, and then you see I made the same spelling mistake again. What I can do is I can do this. I can grab my Listbox, self Listbox1, and I can send put labels to it. So let's put some labels in, and I'm going to send it an array of, say, 1 and 2. And then I want to have values, so Listbox1 put values, and again an array 1 and 2. So let's save that. Now let's go ahead and push that aside, double click, and there I have my array of values in there with the labels. Now that's fairly interesting, it works, but let's say that I wanted something more interesting. Say I had a collection of people and I wanted to put those in and have them print their names in the list box. Okay, so now that I've created a person class and given it the appropriate methods, I can do this. Listbox1 put objects, and I hand it a collection of people. So let's inspect that. And interestingly enough, you notice that our inspector doesn't show the printing of this, even though it will in the ObjectStudio Listbox, and that's because the API between VisualWorks and ObjectStudio is a little different here. In VisualWorks, we would use print on : In ObjectStudio, we use print in much the same way you would use display string in VisualWorks. So looking at class person, if I look at this sample list method, it's just returning me a collection of people. So I create 4 people and then have this array of 4 of them come back. And then over here on the instance side under OS printing, I have this print method which just returns last comma first. So that's all there is to that. So now, having done all that, let's push that aside, double click, and there we have our list box with first name, last name, like this. So that's really all there is to doing a simple Listbox widget in ObjectStudio. Now it turns out there are a bunch of other properties of the Listbox. You can hook it directly to databases, you can have a double click actions, you can use the multi-selection list, you can do all those things. I'll go over that in future screencasts. But this gives you kind of a basic overview for how the Listbox widget works in ObjectStudio. So that's about it for today. Until next time, have fun with Smalltalk.